G'day, g'day, I'm Ash, welcome back to the channel. This is the KV2 in a very empty warehouse. This warehouse was essentially an area you can access to store some extra vehicles. I wish it was more easy to access, you have to go through a couple of windows to get it. But in today's video, we're taking a look at the infamous Soviet tank buster, the KV2. And yeah, should be a bunch of fun. So, let's get stuck straight into it. Okay, so first and foremost, we've moved it to the workshop and now we've got to disassemble it. So I'm just taking a brief look at the condition of the vehicle. Overall, it doesn't look to be too bad. I do want to have a look at the tank statistics first and foremost. But familiarization of this game is a bit of an interesting one. Let me go put engine out, and we've put the turret out, so now the engine and the turret are both separated from the vehicle. It's been a while since I played this game, actually. Too long. And now that we're standing on top of this particular vehicle, well, it's about time that we actually give it a bit of a do-over. And we're going to remove absolutely everything from the interior of this vehicle. And let's start by just disassembling absolutely everything. The good thing about this game is you don't have to get dirty and go in there and rust-filled environments. But normally the first period, I talk about this quite often, is documentation. What have you got? What have you got to deal with? After the documentation process and the photo taking's been, you know, parted for, and what parts do you have laying around, it's then a matter of how do I repair this? Where do I go from here? So a hull would be potentially, you know, a nice thing to go back to, but then you also have a bunch of parts that you also have to restore, and they're just sitting and laying around. So I mean, I'm taking these buffers off. They're just road wheel buffers. This is one of the older models. It isn't exactly as detailed as, say, for example, the mouse. There's quite a number of pieces on the mouse, if I remember correctly. Same with the King Tiger. Go have a look at my collection, probably in another video, because I'm basically just at this stage hunting achievements and finishing off a couple of things. I can't grab the antenna, but the shackle will do. And now we'll just take off any remaining pieces off the side of the vehicle as possible. Because again, this process is quite interesting. The way that the game sort of makes you look at, I guess, the shape of a vehicle and how it's actually made. Now, they've done a good job of making you understand that, but in the restoration business, which I'm not in, I worked in for a couple of years in and out doing work experience as a part of my school trade education. Yeah, this thing is incredibly complicated to actually do, and you've got to get it right sometimes. At least this game, you can sort of check statistics. I'm going to tear everything off the engine. A very basic V-block engine there with not much on it at all. At least with the King Tiger, you've got a bit more to work with. I was a bit disappointed with that, because there isn't much else to it. Alright, now for the big turret. So what we do know about this particular vehicle is, well, it was a bunker buster. And the general staff in Russia demanded a specifically equipped version with a heavy howitzer to deal with concrete bunkers. And we all know that this thing is a dirt machine at heart. Back door, is there any other bit spaces? Okay, there's an optic cover there. 203 of them were built from 1939 to mid-1941 with various upgrades. And now you can play this in World of Tanks, War Thunder. I believe it's in Steel Gear, another tank simulation game. I should drive this particular vehicle. I think IL-2 also has one for their ground forces, I'm not entirely sure, so maybe we'll check out all versions of the KV2 in some point, at least in video game format. And, well, the Russians are kind of crazy when it comes to designing things. What they did is they just made a new turret for an existing gun, and so what you got was a towering turret, which was only accessible by ladder, and a very notably top-heavy vehicle, which is quite interesting. Now, sander? No. Yeah. We want to get rid of all that rust removal. So rust removal tool for the three major parts that we have left. Like so. And go do the same to the engine block, which should have more pieces in it. They really should go and update their models. Again, Polish developers. And the publisher of this game has quite a lot of other titles under its belt as well that are similarly restoration themed. I believe recently the guys also acquired the aircraft simulator, was it Airplane Mechanic Simulator, I think it was called. And, well, I haven't played that game in considerable time. Apparently they've really done a nasty number on what the game used to be. Anyway, we're just going to give it a bit of primer. We're going to leave it in its traditional green, because I don't think there's really any other colour. Oh, before painting, I should have at least fixed the weld on the front. Where's the welding? There it is. So, this isn't one of those newer mechanics. They sort of put penetration marks everywhere, and they put a, you know, oh look, there's a spot that's damaged. You better go weld the back of the vehicle, because you never know. But it doesn't really do anything to the integrity of the vehicle outside of, well, that's a piece that I forgot to remove, didn't I? There we go. Just magically clean up the gearbox. Like that. It's brand new now. Just... Can I prime it? No. It'd be nice to have like a mini game where you actually lift up the turret and lift up the vehicle by the massive crane on the top. That's something that I've always wanted in this game. Maybe something like a mini game in the paint shop, but you know, we're just gonna outsource the repairs just for simplicity's sake. So, and now I've got to go buy all the rest of the parts. Now we've got the fun part of restoring the rest of the vehicle. Now, the troublesome part of a KV2 initially probably would be its gearbox, but we're going to restore the engine anyway. Essentially, the KV2 was so unreliable the gearbox would break easily, and the immense recoil of the gun meant the small turret ring could really jam. And obviously being such a tall target, they really had trouble on like uneven surfaces and slopes, so you know, the majority of KV2 losses in 1941 were due to breakdowns or lack of fuel, which forced them to be abandoned, and that's where we get the captured Beuterpanzer KV2 variant, where the Germans actually basically took a look at the KV2 and assessed that particular sort of feature. Engine is now 100%. The engine was probably the most reliable thing of this whole entire vehicle out, I must say, but being of KV1 pedigree, you know, all you've done is slapped a big turret on a small turret ring in the same position and expect it to work exactly the same as a regular KV. Now, the interesting part about this is because of its, well, engineering faults, usually the only time it would actually be taken out in enemy action was due to the fact that, well, it had run over a German anti-tank mine. So, you know, it was actually used as a breakthrough tank and often would become the very first victim in a series of assaults. And they quite like that, I guess, I don't know. Imagine using a heavy tank for that thing. The Germans really didn't have anything that was heavy enough to really penetrate the vehicle itself, so it kind of came to a shock. Especially, similarly, the 1st Panzer Division on 23rd of June 1941 in Lithuania proves just how resilient the KV2 could be. A record of the engagement, as quoted on tankencyclopedia.com, says, "Our company has opened fire from 700 meters, 765 yards. We got closer and closer. Soon we're about 50 to 100 meters from each other. Fantastic engagement opened up. Without any German progress, the Soviet tanks continued their advance, and our armor-piercing projectiles simply bounced off. The Soviet tanks withstood a point-blank fire from both our 50mm and our 75mm guns, and a KV2 was hit more than 70 times, and not a single round penetrated. Very few Soviet tanks were immobilized and eventually destroyed as we managed to shoot at their tracks, which brought artillery up to hammer them at close range, and then it was attacked at close range with satchel charges." Particularly interesting, because again, it's based on the KV1. Germans didn't really have a good time with the KV1 early on, but yeah. Alright, let's put the toolbox on, and several of the other bits and pieces. In the fuel tank, slot in the radiator, just basically put in every single part that is known to man, because obviously I've just bought the replacement parts for this whole entire vehicle, which makes this process a little bit easier. But I will be selling this vehicle after I finish with it. Anyhow, general statistics for the main armament for the gun is 152mm or 5.98 inch. It's a 1938/1940 L20 howitzer, and later they actually mounted 152mm M10 for the later models, and also 2 machine guns, one for the co-driver and one for the actual turret itself. I believe War Thunder has the 2 variants quite well. There's a 1939 and then there is a 1940 variant. Anyway, we're putting in the buffers again, as we did at the start of the video. They're probably the easiest part, although there should be some screws holding them in. I don't know why they haven't modelled that. Anyway, we're going to put the roller wheels in and probably put tracks on one side, and then we'll go finish the internals. Normally, in a restoration, you'd finish the inside of the vehicle first before dealing with the outside components like that. But in the case of the Cairns Tank Museum, where they've got a Tiger that they've built from battlefield parts and it's actually fabricated a whole entire shell around them, well then maybe the interior comes a little bit later. Now, so it's interesting to note that the hull armor of this thing is 75mm front, 75 side and 70 back. The turret, on the other hand, is 75, 75, and 75. So, you know, it's quite a monstrous vehicle when you think about that. 76 millimeters, that is quite a lot of, that's quite a lot of depth when you think about, you know, it's pure steel. I'm gonna have to put the bits of engine in here, some more torsion bars. But yeah, like the KV2 is a really, really decent vehicle. I say decent because it's wacky in a way. People like derp guns, and I quite like playing the KV2. I've got some fond moments playing around, at least with the vehicle itself. Hang on, I'm gonna also put on the tracks on either side. Okay, so last road wheel for now, and then a suspension arm. We've also got to go to the interior. We'll sort that out in just a second here. There we go. And the top of the track link, some guy with a hammer and a giant lever and a basically a pull bar. Put the rear track there and the top of that. Well, I think that's it for now until, well, we put on the rest of the torsion bars, obviously, but we'll just put on absolutely every part we possibly can because, well, I want this to sell quite well. We've already done the turret, I think. Done some of the torsion bars. Well, I think that's all I can access. Alright, time to access invisible mode with something that's not available in real life. Can you imagine if this was available in the real world? Man, we wouldn't need, you know, some sort of X-ray vision. It'd be nuts. Kind of can see X-ray. Thing is, nowadays things are done by digital, so in some cases you can. Right, put in the drive shaft properly for the engine and everything else. I don't think there's anything else in there that we really have to put in, unless I'm missing something. No, it looks like it's all good. Okay, we'll just continue adding to the vehicle as we possibly can. Can I get rid of this? There we go. Again, not the most ideal scenario here. Put in all the suspension arms, go do the road wheels. Because the engine is rear mounted, everything is rear driven. The idler wheel is at the front. Interestingly enough, the Germans learnt to knock out the idler wheels on Soviet vehicles because most of the times they were the most identifiable part of the vehicle. If you shot at the front of a track with an anti-tank gun, the likelihood that you break the track and obviously damage the idler wheel would be higher. I mean, you'd immobilize the vehicle. Then you have the challenge of actually neutralizing the crew and actually getting the vehicle... Oh, we have to jump around here. And actually knocking out the vehicle properly, but... There we are. Okay, now we can put the rest of the tracks on. What I'm interested to learn about is what the Germans thought about the KV2 as a whole. You know, we've got one in War Thunder, and I don't really know much else about it, apart from the fact that they've put a commander's cupola from a Panzer IV on top and an extra ammunition cage, suffice to say. Oh, bugger. I've just put the turret on the other end. Oops. Alright. That's both the engine and, I think, test drive. Let's go fill her up with fuels. That's both the engine and the turret installed, so now we're just going to fill up with fuel, I presume. There's 2 fuel tanks either side of the engine. And the animation they provide is exactly the greatest. Okay, right, we've filled both of these. Let's go do the same process again. Go through the test drive. Let's go through the oil this time, which just magically pours through the vehicle. And gives you a HP bar. Okay, do the same thing again. Now we're just going to put in the coolant. There's 2 containers, again, filling through the steel plates. And doing the same for the other coolant there. Right. Okay. I think we're done. I don't think there's anything else we need to do. Yeah, no, we've done those already. Yeah, okay. Cool. Another fun fact about the KV2 is there is only one example left as a survivor of the war. It's currently housed at the Central Armed Forces Museum in Moscow. And what's interesting about that is only one of them survived. So again, an oddball kind of vehicle, which means that I'm technically restoring the last vehicle. Bloody hell, that thing's loud. Alright, let's get it on the test range, shall we? Now, interestingly enough, this test range, I don't really feature on the channel that much. There is another driving area of the regular map. Some scrap bits and pieces, some equipment absolutely everywhere. But I don't really feature this in the videos because I don't really think this is the main part of the game. The main part of the game is actually finding the tank, digging it up, then restoring it, and then obviously selling it. But there's a side of the games really exist in terms of feasibility. It just adds to the game's feel. Now, while it is a stable 60 FPS, it does feel a bit clunky, so there is that. Alright, let's go. Can we get some more speed, please? Come on. But yeah, as painted the outside as possibly Soviet as I could, leaving it in the primer camouflage. And then we're going to see if we can get into the gunner position and fire one of the rounds off, because that's also, you know, what we're here for, really. You want to see the derp do derp things, so we'll park her in front of the stand here. We're never going to go anywhere near that. Alright, come on, give her a little bit of left track, please. Oh boy. Alright, power up. And full turn. There we go. Okay, now how do I get in... sliding around. How do I get in the driver's seat again? This is going to be interesting. Give me a moment. I'm mashing buttons in the gunner seat, but nothing's happening. It hasn't exactly... Okay, we managed to reload the shell. Okay, there we go. The G530AC. Alright, here we go. Well, that was disappointing. I did all that work for nothing. Oh well, I'm gonna sell you immediately. Essentially, you're fucking useless. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching today's video. Hopefully you've enjoyed it, hopefully you learned something, and let me know if you want to see more videos like this. My name is Ash, and I'll catch you in the next one.